Well, Book My Lens has done it again. They've booked their date with destiny, as it were, because they've laid their hands on one of the only two, I'm told, brand new Nikon Z 600mm f4 TCS VR lenses in the whole of India. And this is an extremely exciting lens. We know this because it's the big daddy of bird photography, as I call it, and a very important super telephoto lens which completes the set of exotic telephoto lenses from the Nikon stable for now. And so I'm extremely excited to unbox this today. Many thanks to Book My Lens for once again sending me this lens to unbox. And if you don't know yet, they are a rental company in Bengaluru, so please log on to www.bookmylens.com right now to hire it. But now it's time to unbox this baby. First, there's a warranty, a manual, and there is a strap, and finally there is a thank you note with a sticker. Let's get this baby out, and voila. Okay, this is it. What we shall do is perhaps mount it on the Z9, which also Book My Lens has sent me very kindly, and take a slightly closer look as we usually do. Shall we? Right here then, we have the lens mounted on the Z9, and this is what it looks like. So my first impression of it is that it's a spitting image of the Z400mm f2.8 VRS, except of course that the front is a whole lot longer, which is a consequence of the focal length, but otherwise it's remarkable what consistency of look and feel Nikon has actually maintained in this entire family of telephoto lenses. In the front you have the same hood that we've seen in the 400. Of course there was also the lens cap, which again is a pretty standard affair these days with Nikon mirrorless lenses. It's got 600mm written on it, and it has a velcro strap. You can put it on and take it off without even removing the strap, which is handy because you don't want to be messing around with noisy straps out in the field and struggling to pull it off when you suddenly need to use it when that tiger appears or a bird appears. Then back behind this large knurled front element, you have the set of 4 function keys, and just behind which there is a rather curious looking ring, which again we have seen in the 400. It looks like a set of piano keys, and it's very plasticky, and also it's not very satisfying to operate because it's just a half rotation thing. We've seen this in Canon before, of course, ages before Nikon implemented it, if I'm not wrong, and using which you can again snap focus. So Nikon's actually giving you multiple ways of doing the same things, which is never a bad thing, but unless it comes at the expense of something else, which I'll come to in a bit. Then behind that is the ring which I am really fond of, which is this function ring which you can program to change a number of things like aperture, shutter speed, exposure compensation, ISO, and so on in a gradual way instead of in a jarring, sudden way, which is what happens when you use the command dial to change the same thing. The knurling pattern on it is superb, and it seems to be made of metal, unlike this other ring. It's beautifully damped, of course, turns 360 degrees, so it's an absolute joy to use. But behind this now, of course, you have the focus ring, and this is a talking point because I hope Nikon did not decide to have a narrower focus ring simply because they were left with no space, what with the presence of these other 2 rings here, because frankly the focus ring is a little narrower than I would like. This is something that I have said in the context of the 800 and the 400mm as well. But on the upside, it is every bit as good as all the other mirrorless telephoto lenses that we have unboxed and tested so far. It's beautifully damped. There is no sort of squeakiness or jarring sounds to it. It is silky smooth, to use Nikon's own language to describe the autofocus. And everything is good except the width of the ring, which I wish were a little broader. Back here you of course have the tripod collar, which is pretty much the same as the other lenses we've tested, and then you have the labeling up here which says it's a Z600mm 1:4 TCVRS made in Japan, as it should be for such an expensive and important lens, followed by the serial number. So that's the badging for you. Now you also have, of course, the eyelets for the strap, which I showed you while unboxing. Then back here you have more badging. It is again probably inspired by Canon, and of course we've seen this in the other telephotos from Nikon in recent years as well. Curiously, of course, they dropped the F here and just call it 600/4S. So that's a bit of an idiosyncrasy here, and it proudly declares Teleconverter Built In, because this right here is the teleconverter housing, and the implementation is identical to that in the 400mm f2.8 TCVRS, which was of course the first of Nikon's Z lenses to introduce that feature. You have this switch to toggle between 1x and 1.4x, and below that there is a lock. Now the lock is extremely plasticky, exactly like it was in the 400mm f2.8, so I would probably leave that alone and leave it unlocked all the time rather than having to move it each time I want to change. So the switch itself is pretty solid. It gives a solid thunk when moved. Let me see if I can help you hear it. There you go. Can you hear it? Okay, so it can be a bit unnerving in the beginning, like I said in the 400mm unboxing, which by the way, if you haven't seen, I'll link it up here or here so that you can take a look. And there is no concern in terms of the housing jutting out beyond the diameter of the lens. That is certainly not the case here. Even though this is an f4 lens and not an f2.8 lens, the front element is still very much the broadest part. Then of course, right below that, you have the memory set button, which, like I mentioned, if you want to use these function buttons to snap focus to a preset point, this is exactly where you preset it. Then of course, over here on the left, the switchboard is keeping with all the Z mirrorless lenses, in that it's pretty simple and basic with only 2 switches there, totally Spartan and completely functional, totally adequate. You have the autofocus manual focus toggle, and of course you have the focus limiter to toggle between infinity to 10 meters and full. So those are the 2 options that you get. Now right behind that is the same Rickety drop-in filter holder which we have seen in the 400mm and the 800mm. I say Rickety because this is not at all reassuring in the way it is built. By the way, it's completely hollow. It doesn't have a filter in it, a clear filter of course, as you would in the f-mount lenses of yours. That's about sums it up. We will have to see if the lens lives up to its billing in terms of performance, in terms of autofocus speed and accuracy, and in terms of balance and holdability. I'm really looking forward to using this in the field. I hope you are too. So please log on to www.bookmylens.com if you would like to hire this. And in the meanwhile, I'll see you in another video soon. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.